Hello and welcome to the 18th round of the 2016 PCC Cup Series season, here for the Round of France. Qualifying on the pole for the second time this season is Nicholas Cordovos, with Alina Lazareva on his outside, making it a Griffith Motorsports front row. Now, Nicholas Cordovos and Ben Atkins got into an argument after the round of Finland, with Cordovos criticizing the way that Atkins won the race using pit strategy. And Atkins, some words were said, and Atkins said that he would smite Cordovos, so we're going to see how that plays out here today. As Christopher Loxonen won the pole for the PCC Europe race, Katrin Skirl and Giuseppe Balducci got into it early on, and they went into the wall, and points leader Clara Kindle got into some contact with Fritz Steiner there, went around on lap 1, and as she made her way back through the field, she ran a bit wide and got into Allison Smith Jr. there and backed it into the wall, and her day went from bad to worse, and from worse to terrible when Lev Zarapin dumped her and ended her day there. She would score no points and lose a lot of ground in the championship. Ingrid Jane Ambleton, and oh, that's a rough hit from Ambleton into the wall with Stuart Buchanan. A bunch of cars wrecked in the chicane there, with David Hetzel getting airborne, and that's a couple other cars in there. Scariest incident of the day would occur with Rickards Lipsbergs and Marchenkov, as Marchenkov phased through the wall. Gonna have to get in contact with Marchenkov and figure out how he did that, because he phased through that wall like it was nothing, and that was exceedingly bizarre. We'd have a good battle for 6th place between Johan Sigurdsson and JP Beaufort. A little bit of contact there, and Beaufort decides to end his existence by putting him into the wall there. Both drivers would be okay, and Christopher Loxonen would lead every lap to take the victory in the Round of France and close the gap in the points to Clara Kindle and Jan Schmidt. And with that, the field's going to come down to the green flag, and Cordovos is going to get a good jump on the inside there. Gaspar de Souza was sleeping on that restart. Cordovos is going to slot in front of his teammate Alina Lazareva on the high side. Lazareva holds on to 2nd place. She's going to pull a little bit low there, and de Souza fails to get a good run, and that means that Israel Bruce is going to take 3rd. But by the end of lap 1, the two teammates, Cordovos and Lazareva, have a pretty good gap on the rest of the field there. Oh, that's some contact in the back between Bruce and Ballard for 3rd. But the Griffith Motorsports teammates lead the way early on, as here's your points leader early in the race, lap 2, Ike Durbin, right in front of his points rival and teammate Tom Delgado. Both cars finished in the top 10 at Karyala. Durbin got a top 5, Delgado got a top 10, and they're both hoping for good runs here today. And so far, it's looking like they're going to have the same kind of runs here in France. So, going to keep an eye on this car throughout the day. This is Ben Atkins, and the officials are going to be watching him under the microscope after some comments he made on Twitter about smiting Nicholas Cordovos after Cordovos got angry at him for a legitimate pit strategy win. So Cordovos is not really right in insulting Atkins for a win that he won fairly. As, oh, that's some contact between Lazareva and Ballard. They're going to go off into the sand trap, come back on. That's some contact between de Souza and Lazareva, but she saves it. Good driving by Lazareva there. Going to go on board with Ballard. And this is the turn where a lot of cars were wrecking in the PCC Europe race. Ballard gets some air going into the sand trap. He's going to slow down, pull on track, and not make contact with James Hewitt, who's going to challenge him for that position. As here's a battle for 33rd, 4-car battle between Worthington, Bell, and this battle has been pretty intense. There's Craig there and Bernfardt. Oh, that's an unforced error from Worthington. He's going to sweep across the track and take all 3 cars into the wall. That's your teammate, Worthington. You might not want to do that, as all 3 cars are going to get away with some significant rear end damage. Going to go on board with Joe Craig here. And Bell and Worthington too wide going in there, and that's just an unforced error. Worthington is normally a better driver than that, and just must have just lost talent going into that turn, because that's a little bit ridiculous from Worthington. He's not really known for that. As Israel Bruce has gotten around Alina Lazareva for 2nd place, and he is hunting down Nicholas Cordovos. He is one of the fastest cars on the track, as Lazareva has dropped back to, looked like 5th place there. She was getting challenged by Ben Atkins, and Atkins is going to take that spot, and Bruce is hunting down Cordovos, as here is Ingrid Hadeland in her last run of the season. She is in 11th place, doing a great job. So Hadeland looking for a job This is her last race of the season, and hopefully we'll see her later in the season. She might get a run for Cleveland, but as far as we're aware, she doesn't have any plans to return to the States for the Matthews Motorsports team. And Israel Bruce has closed the gap once again, and so has Gaspar de Souza, who are the fastest 2 cars on track. Looks like Bruce is going to make a move on the inside on this long straightaway. They're pulling even. Bruce might have the advantage here. He backs off. Almost makes it 3 wide there with Gaspar de Souza, and he makes it 2 wide for the lead. Gets a nose ahead there, but Cordovas is going to battle back on the high side, and Cordovas is going to survive this challenge here early on. As looks like we've got a pretty intense battle for 21st between Duncan Cobb. Oh, that's some contact between Burt and Cobb, and Cobb has none of that. Turns Burt into the wall. They're both going to go hard and out of the race early on. What was that about? Looks like going to take on board and see what happened there with Alex Phillips. As, oh, that's a hard hit for Burt, and just couldn't control it. Duncan Cobb goes into the wall. And Akio Gifu spins out there trying to right his car, and he'd have to pit for that. As Cordovas once again under fire early on, as Bruce is trying to make a run on the opposite lane this time coming into these turns. And gonna see how this works out for him. Still side by side through there. Oh, Bruce gets the advantage, but he has to check up as Cordovas takes advantage on the inside. And Cordovas, they're still 2 wide. Looks like Bruce might have the advantage coming into this turn. 2 by 2 at the front of the field. Bruce still has a good run there, but Cordovas gets the run off the turn, and he's going to take advantage and survive another attack from Israel Bruce. So Cordovas hanging on for dear life at the front of the field as some of the top 10 starts to catch up, as we've got a battle for last here, and that's going to end in tears. Jefferson and Wheat Farmer go into the wall and out of the race. So much for them having any kind of good run here today. Speaking of drivers actually having good runs, here's Franz Bergman up in 18th place, having a pretty strong showing once again. So he's 3 for 3 with top 20 showings so far, and hopefully he can stay up near the front and possibly get his first top 10 of the year in his last start in this 35 car. Got another battle once again up front. Bruce trying to take the same line that he did before, and it's not going to work out. He's still going to be 2 wide, edging just ahead, and no, that's 3 laps in a row that Bruce is not going to be able to make a challenge for the lead and make it stick. So he's got to be getting frustrated by this point, as next lap, fourth time's the charm maybe, pulling alongside. Bruce and Cordovas going for it. Bruce is going to nose ahead, but he has to check up, doesn't want to make contact with Cordovas there. Oh, almost does there, and he's going to go just about into the grass and lose a lot of time. So Bruce is getting frustrated with Cordovas blocking, and you can see just how this is grouped up the top 6 or 7 cars from the back of Cordovas, and they're just waiting to pounce, waiting for him to make a mistake, as Kyuga Hakai is going to do battle with Bernfart Jr. We had an incident back here, and he's going to make contact and go hard into the wall. That's going to take both Bernfart and Hakai out, so disaster for Clayson Enterprises, as all 3 cars are going to go out very early on. Preston Bell is the first car to go a lap down. He came into the pits after his contact with the Lucas Motorsports teammates of Craig and Worthington, and he's not going to pose too much of a problem for the leaders who are putting him a lap down. He's going to get out of the way and stay out of the racing line. As Cordovas under attack once again. This is lap 8, and gets through the S's pretty well, but he's going to be a bit slow. Oh, that's some contact between Bruce and him, and he's going to go hard into the wall, flipping down the track. Oh my goodness, that was a huge incident. Cordovas is out of it. That was a massive incident. Going to go on board with Ben Atkins, and wow, 15 feet into the air at least. That was a brutal crash for Cordovas. We have no idea if he's all right. Gonna take a slow motion look here, and his car caught the guardrail and got launched into the air. Wow, that is some impressive flight by the 39 car, and he's gonna hit the tire barriers there. They'd get that car off the track, and he would be taken to a local hospital. We have no word on Cordova's medical condition, but that was a very scary incident. Going to go on board with Israel Bruce and take a look. Cordova's got that right, got that line all wrong, and wow, that was a Team Ben Atkins car, which means that, wait a second, Atkins was right, as now we've got Gaspar de Souza in the lead over James Hewitt there. Ben Atkins up to third place, and de Souza is immediately under fire, as we're gonna try to figure out the gravity of that situation with Israel Bruce taking out Nicholas Cordovas, as that may have been a prophecy coming true from Ben Atkins. It was one of his team cars after all, as Bruce brings that car into the pits to repair the damage that was done. De Souza has gapped Hewitt by a bit, and this is setting up to be one of de Souza's best runs in a couple years, as de Souza up front is one of the fastest cars on track. He's pulled away from Hewitt, and de Souza looking very strong. He has one win at Talladega. It's looking like he's going to try and make it number 2 here today, as he definitely has the speed and the pace to do so. Here's de Souza's teammate Clay Gibson, and possibly his last showing of the year in the 52 car, and he's running in 6th place, right behind a couple of the top 5 cars. There's Lazareva and Ballard right in front of him. He's lost touch a bit, but it looks like it's going to be a good showing today for Clay Gibson. Tom Wilson and Ian Elias are doing battle for 13th place. Oh, that's some contact, and he gets turned into the same wall that sent Cordovas flying, but he's going to keep it going, and that was just a couple laps after that Cordovas incident. So what are you doing, Ian Elias? Are you trying to replicate what just happened there with Cordovas, as it looks like the line went wrong, and Elias just gave him no room. He stole his line and just dumped him there. So officials are going to have a word with Ian Elias after that one, as James Hewitt has caught back up to Gaspar de Souza, and now Hewitt and Atkins are the fastest 2 cars on track, as it looks like de Souza is going to have to hang on, as we're starting to near that point for green flag pit stops. It looks like Hewitt's going to make it too wide, trying to use Barry Juveno as a pick, but Juveno is going to get through that S pretty fine, and he's going to lay over and let de Souza get by, as Worthington pulls into the pits, and looks like they're going to try and service this car, but Worthington is reporting that he's done. He is done for the day. He will get out of the car. Crew's going to service it, but Worthington will get out of the car, and we caught up to him later, and he said that he did it, got out of the car for the 39. So some sympathy for Cordovas from Ben Worthington here today. As here is Vincenzo Focasato in the 00. This is his last run in the car, and he is 23rd. So haven't seen any flashy performances, any great performances from this 00 car, but in every race he's brought it home at the finish, and looks like he might be trying to do so here today. It won't be a flashy finish, but he'll bring it home in a pretty decent position. He's in 23rd right now, as Josh Marshall's going to do battle with Franz Bergman for 15th place. Oh, that's gone all wrong, and Josh Marshall's going to slide off track, get that car pointed in the right direction, and he's gonna lose a lot of time, but he's going to continue on without any damage. That was a bit of a mistake there, Marshall. Brakes are your friend, as here's the battle for 10th place between Ramsey Cockiner and Sapphire Anderson, who's having another strong run. And Anderson's going to take a look on the inside, but looks like Ramsey Cockiner is going to hang on to the position. Cockiner's been saving fuel on this run, which means that he might try and stretch it and make it a one-stop. So he's going to put a gap on Sapphire Anderson there and continue on. We're going to watch that car here, as checking back in on your championship leader. This is Ike Durbin. He's up in 9th place, so he's gained 1 position. He has lost touch with Tom Delgado, who is way out in front of him. So it looks like Ike Durbin's just going to take it easy here today and try and get a top 10 out of the steal and get out of here without making too many mistakes. As James Hewitt now trying to put additional pressure on Gaspar de Souza right before green flag pit stops. Cars are starting to come in here on this lap, but looks like Hewitt is going to make a move on the inside. Ben Atkins has been back there saving fuel behind these cars for a few laps, so he might try and make it a one-stop too. And Hewitt is going to back off coming through the chicane, and we did have a few cars come in. There's Clay Gibson, Tom Delgado, points leader Ike Durbin is going to come in, Franz Bergman, Scott Wellen are all going to come in this lap. And next lap, lap 19, here comes all the leaders, and Ben Atkins is going to stay out as most of the cars came in. Did have some contact there. Ben Atkins looked like he was going to try and make it in, and he just dumped Dan Ferre. Tried to make it into the pits, but Louis Ballard was there, and Atkins is going to have to stay out another lap. Longest cars have been able to make it on fuel in practice was 20 laps, and Atkins is on lap 20 right now. So we're going to have to see if he can make it to the pits, as just looked like Dan Ferre checked up. Atkins went to move for the pits there, but Ballard was in the way. Good awareness by Atkins. And Dan Ferre just wrong place, wrong time, and that's going to take him out of the race and end the day for Dan Ferre, who was not having such a great run. As coming out of the pits, Gaspar de Souza and Louis Ballard had an excellent pit stop. Team Ben Atkins really dropped the ball back there with James Hewitt, and looked like Alino Zareva was coming out along with Hewitt. But now it's de Souza and Ballard nose to tail, and that looks like it might be the battle for the lead. As we had a car breakdown, that's Brian Gallagher slow on track. 2 mechanical failures in a row for him, as he had a tire go down at Karyala and lost a lot of time, but he's going to stall just shy of the pits. He ran it dry, and unfortunately he will need to get a push back to the pits. As Ben Atkins, lap 20, going to stay out another lap. So no one's been able to do this all day. Ben Atkins is going to stretch at 21 laps on a tank of fuel, and he's going to be hard-pressed to make it back to the pits, though he does have Israel Bruce in front of him, his teammate, who should be able to help him hypermile it back to the pits. And same lap, lap 20, Ramsey Cockiner mentioned he saved fuel. He brings it in on lap 20. This is a 41-lap race, so I doubt he'll be able to make it 21 laps on a tank of fuel. Ben Atkins seems to think that he can do it, but Ramsey Cockiner might try and stretch it, but that's going to be a tall order for him, as Ben Atkins made it back to the pits. He did 21 laps on 1 tank of fuel, so Ben Atkins sets a new record for laps run on a tank of fuel in race conditions, no less. So that is an unbelievable fuel stint by Atkins. He's going to come out of the pits, and there's de Souza and Ballard doing battle. Atkins comes out in front of him, but he's got cold tires, and it looks like de Souza and Ballard are going to catch him coming out of turn 1. They're right behind him. They've got his draft, and they're working together, and they would catch and ultimately pass Ben Atkins a few turns later, as Atkins, not quite up to speed yet, is going to fall back to 3rd place here, as de Souza continues to have one of his best runs of the season up front, doing an excellent job here today. So Gaspar de Souza, in the closest thing to a home race that he has on the schedule, looks to contend for the win in front of his home crowd, as Andy Lambert's having a pretty decent run. He's up in the top 15, doing battle with Ian Elias for that position. He's going to take a peek to the inside. That's a bit of contact there in the chicane, and he's going to go hard into the wall. Ian Elias is going to go over, but both drivers would be okay. That was a scary incident, but both drivers would climb out of their cars without much assistance, as James Hewitt is the fastest car on track. He's back in 4th place right now, still a ways behind the top 3. As here's Barbara Burt having a pretty decent showing. She's up in 16th place, having a pretty decent run, but we have heard absolutely nothing as far as this team's plans for the future, and that's kind of a shame, because this team is doing excellently this year. They're up in 5th in the team points, but no word on if this team is even going to be showing up next season. Toyota is rumored to be dropping back to 1 team next year, as Lewis Jones blows up from 21st place. He was having a pretty good run by his standards. And unfortunately, that's going to end the day for one of the Australian Motorsports cars. There's Kurt Pliskin in the back coming into the pits. He's a bit off cycle. And back up at the front of the field, Gaspar de Souza and Louis Ballard have pulled away from Ben Atkins. Ballard seems content to be running behind de Souza. Maybe he's trying to save fuel and make it a one-stopper, but he pit fairly early on, and I doubt he can make fuel stretch like Ben Atkins did on that last run, as looks like they're getting ready to lap Vinny Focasato up there, as Atkins is dropping back. He's not running on the pace of the cars in front of him. His tires have warmed up, so maybe he's trying to stretch it once again and make it a 20-lap stint, and that would be a one-stopper in that case. So Atkins trying to pull that off, as here's Israel Bruce. Just came out of the pits. He's running up in 15th place, so a pretty strong run for him, despite everything that happened with that Cordova's incident, as he's going to let the leaders go by there without too much of a problem. Ballard's coming into the pits. That's a bit early. Ballard coming into the pits on lap 26 from second place. So this should be a 14-lap stint to the end, which will work well in his favor. He should be very fast at the end of this race. And here is Joe Craig looking to come into the pits. He's a bit off cycle, but Tom Wilson spins him out coming into the pits, and he's going to hit the end of the tire wall there. Looks like Joe Craig is going to continue on with a bit of damage right in front of the leader. But that was a bit sketchy, as we're going to go on board with Tom Wilson and see what happened there. Okay, looks like Wilson just got caught off guard, and Craig just committed to the pits way too late. Earlier we mentioned that James Hewitt was the fastest car on track. That is no longer the case. His gap between himself and Atkins has stabilized, and Hewitt seems content to run where he is. Perhaps he's trying to save fuel, or Atkins has stopped saving fuel and has picked up the pace. So we're going to look into that more, as here is the battle for 5th place between Clay Gibson and Ingrid Hadeland, who are both in possibly their last runs in these cars for the year. No word on if they're going to be showing up later in the season, but they're trying to turn heads and get that extra seat time back in the States. And both drivers having excellent runs here today. And here's a battle for 14th. Barbara Burt and Alex Phillips managed to get up this far. Oh, that's going to be some contact in the chicane, and they're both going to go hard into the wall, as the chicane claims 2 more. And that was a violent-looking wreck, but both drivers would be okay, as 10 laps to go, and Ike Durbin's going to bring his car in from 8th place, your points leader, trying to adopt the pit strategy of his teammate Louis Ballard, who had a pretty long stop, had to repair some damage on that 8 car. Frank Azaretto, haven't talked about him much all season. He's up in the top 20, so this is better than normal. He's usually mired in 25th or something, so he's having a decent day. But Azaretto, who has cybernetic enhancements from his crash in the 2012 New York Auto Ring race, those cybernetic enhancements haven't been helping him all season. It's been a struggle for him to maintain much pace at all in that 36 car, as Atkins has started to close the gap on Gaspar de Souza. He is no longer saving fuel, it would seem, and it seems like he's going to be able to make it the rest of the way, so we're going to keep an eye on this car. He might just be able to make it. He has to do a 20-lap stint to end the race. So here's Tom Delgado. We want to apologize for some comments we made in Finland. We were unaware of his current plans. He is retiring from a driver's role at the end of the season and going into ownership for a lights team. Which team, as of yet determined, but we want to wish him luck in his future endeavors and clear the air of any mistakes that we might have made in our commentary. So best of luck to you, Tom Delgado, in your future endeavors next year. Greg Woodard, negotiations have broke down with his sponsor, and his sponsor will be leaving after this race. Unaware of what sponsor he's going to be bringing on this car, but it looks like it might be a family-funded effort, as Woodard does own a trucking company back in the States. So last race for this sponsor, from what we've been hearing, as Gaspar de Souza is going to be pulling into the pits here with about 7 laps to go. So lap 34 of 41, he's not even going to try and make it a 2-stop. He's not even going to try and make it a 1-stopper. So de Souza comes in after a 17-lap stint, and is going to call it a race. So are a lot of other cars. Lazareva comes in. There's Gibson and Hadeland. But Hewitt is going to stay out an extra lap or two and try and run with Atkins. He's closed the gap back up to Atkins, who it looks like has re-entered fuel-saving mode now that he's in the lead. But Hewitt, a couple laps later, lap 36, is going to commit to the pit lane and leave Atkins out to dry. So he has no drafting help. There's Josh Marshall coming into the pits having a pretty decent run. And Worthington's car is still sitting there. Worthington abandoned his car as Atkins, just a few laps to go, running up at the front of the field. He is the only car that is still on a one-stop strategy aside from Ramsey Cockiner, who we'll talk about in a minute here. But Ben Atkins, he's got some lap traffic in front of him to help him hypermile, but it looks like he's going to be quite a bit faster than them. And Ramsey Cockiner's up in 5th place, drafting with Alina Lazareva there, but like we mentioned before, it's going to be a tall order for this car to make it the rest of the way. He is going to have to replicate what Atkins did and do a 21 lap stint if he's going to try and make it to the end, and I doubt that he's going to be able to do that. James Hewitt has a pretty big gap on Gaspar de Souza, who had a fairly slow pit stop. So de Souza sits 3rd right now. Franz Bergman, we saw a couple shots before, he's up in 13th place, so it doesn't look like he's going to get a top 10 in his last start, but he's going to come close. And for a driver who's been trying to break into the series for so long, he showed up for the first time in 2012. This is a dream come true for him in this 3-race stint, and hopefully we'll see more of him sometime in the near future. So Franz Bergman having an excellent run here today. Same thing with Scott Wallen, who just got lapped by Ben Atkins. He's in 12th place, the best running of the Lucas Motorsports cars. Joe Craig still soldiering on with that damage, and Ben Worthington, he parked his car out of concern for Corredovos. He didn't want this race to continue on, so he parked himself for his own concern for Corredovos. So hopefully Corredovos is okay. We haven't heard anything back from the hospital regarding his condition, as looks like Ramsey Cockiner is going to call it on that one-stop strategy. He comes into the pits with just 3 laps to go. So Atkins is the only car on a one-stop strategy right now. 2 laps to go. Atkins is still staying on track. Right now, it is a 19-lap stint for Atkins. Next time by, it'll be 20. But Atkins seems to be fine. We're going to take a look and see if he stays out here. I don't know if he's going to be able to stretch it, but if he does, this is going to be very impressive, as coming to take the white flag, no sign of Atkins coming into the pits. He's going to stay out and take the white flag and try and make it a one-stopper. He's got a couple lapped cars in front of him. That's Daniel Sharp and Sapphire Anderson up there, and he might try and draft off of them and conserve some fuel, but Atkins just set one of the faster laps of the race. He set a 1:43. That's not the fastest lap of the race, but it is very close. And he's still hunting down those cars in front of him, so we'll see if he can make it stretch. Atkins would get around Sharp and Sapphire Anderson, who is running up in 11th place. So coming through the final couple turns, Atkins just reported that his fuel pressure gauge light came on. So on fumes, Ben Atkins is going to take his 4th career win, 3rd of the season, and 2nd in a row in the Round of France. Now we're going to see, can Atkins make it back to the pits, because he reported that he was running so low on fuel coming out of turn number 1. And it looks like Atkins is out. Yep, Atkins just ran out of fuel, just past the start-finish line, coming out of turn number 1. Looking at the rest of the top 20, James Hewitt held on to finish in 2nd place, having an excellent run. Gaspar de Souza, what could have been for him? He had an excellent run today. Still got on the podium, but this one's got to be bittersweet for de Souza and the rest of the Paloma Autosport group. Alina Lazareva, P4, great run for her. Louis Ballard had a slow pit stop on that 2nd stop and fell back to 5th place. Clay Gibson, P6, great run for him. Same thing with Ingrid Hadeland in P7 in possibly their last runs of the season. Tom Delgado, P8, another top 10 for the leading top 10 scorer of the season. Ramsey Cockiner, P9. That one stop didn't quite work out, but he still got a top 10 out of the deal. And Ike Durbin rounds out the top 10 your points leader. As Sapphire Anderson, first car 1 lap down, P11, great run for her. Same thing with Scott Woolen in P12. Franz Bergman, P13, great way to close out the season for him. Tom Wilson, P14, after getting some damage. And Josh Marshall, P15, he slid off the track. Greg Woodard, things finally went right for him for a change, and he got 16th place. Good run for him. Brian Gallagher recovered from stalling on track to finish 17th. Israel Bruce, Ben Atkins' harbinger of doom, P18 for him after that damage. Frank Azaretto gets a top 20. And Vinny Focasato rounds out the top 20 in his last race of the season in the 00 car. Good run for him. Taking a look at the point standings now, Ike Durbin's points lead is down under a full race. It is now 36 points over the new second place driver in points, Ben Atkins, who has won 2 in a row. Tom Delgado slips back to 3rd, but still had a very strong performance today up in the top 10. James Hewitt, P4. Gaspar de Souza rounds out the top 5, having a great showing this season. Louis Ballard, P6. Sapphire Anderson, best rookie so far, P7. Ian Elias had his issues today. He fell down to P8. Brian Gallagher, P9. And Nicholas Cordovos, I sure hope that Cordovos is okay. That was a huge hit for him, and we wish the best in whatever recovery he has in that accident. Mark Burt, P11, second best rookie. He fell out of the top 10 for the first time in a very long time. Josh Marshall moves up to P12. He's having a fantastic season. Same thing with Tom Wilson up in P13. Duncan Cobb slips down to P14 after his early crash. Barbara Burt, P15. Not sure what her team is doing next season, even though all cars are up in the top 20. Haven't heard any word from that team whatsoever. Andy Lambert, P16, had his issues today. Hank Jr. Wheat Farmer had a disastrous race. Falls down to P17 in points, tied with Ramsey Cockiner for that position, who makes an appearance up in the top 20. Same thing with Alina Lazareva in P19, her first appearance in the top 20 in a long time, and Akio Gifu rounds out the top 20 in the 466 car. And finally, taking a look at the team standings, we have a major development in the relegation battle, as after a horrible day for Clayson Enterprises, they've dropped all the way from 8th to 12th in the standings, putting them in the first relegation spot, just 4 points behind Lucas Motorsports, who sit in the final safe position. However, PCC Cup Series president John Kowalski has planned several major announcements before the round of Indiana. One of them is expected to be an announcement regarding the number of teams competing next season. There is a rumor going around that the number of teams will expand from 14 to 15, and we'll see how that affects the relegation battle for next season.